Why are you interested? Why are you interested in interviewing other people about their lives?
I think because you always hear about all these famous people, particularly in Cambridge, who talk about their lives and everything, and they get all this, they're written up in books, and everybody knows about them. But I felt at the beginning of my work that ordinary people who live in the communities really need to tell their stories because they're the people that live their everyday lives right in the city. And the historical record, to me, is not complete without these stories. Because you're not going to hear from John Kenneth Galbraith, let's say, the games that he played when he was a kid in Cambridge, or what the stores were like on Mass Ave down in Central Square. And so the people that tell me their stories tell me that information, and it's very important because many people, such as yourself, if you went to Central Square, you might think, well, that's the way it's always been, but it's changed so much over the years. So I think it's really, really important for younger people to know what the history of their communities is, because it really gets them in touch with their families and what their families contributed to the neighborhoods in the city. And it also points out to many people the importance of regular folks in establishing the city. And I've found that the stories that people have told me are incredible. To my mind, they're more important than those of the, quote, important people, because they really speak about the human condition and the struggles that people have had to coming from other countries as immigrants, and coming here, and some people not knowing English, and settling in neighborhoods and learning the language and adapting to the culture. But also, I found people and it's a very good thing that people have held on to their cultures from their other countries. So they have their cultures, and then they have their being an American, let's say. So it's all, it's all very, very important to the history of this country.
Thank you. Second question: what is something you would like to change or add to your progress, to where you are at today?
In terms of the work that I do?
Yeah, like so far, what you accomplished, what would you like to change or add?
Well, I don't know whether I can add anything myself, since in about a year I'm going to retire. But, I would like somebody to pick it up. I would like the city to continue to fund these projects so that all the neighborhoods in the city are covered. I've only done I'll have only done 4 neighborhoods by the time I retire, and there are 13 neighborhoods in the city. So that leaves 9 left to do. And I just feel like because Cambridge is a unique kind of place, that it's really important that that people are heard from all these different neighborhoods.
Question 3: what is something hard that you had to do in order to get where you are now?
Oh, well, it's kind of interesting. You know how you might look back and say, God, that was hard, what I did. But you're kind of looking at it from hindsight, and you're going, well, okay, I did it, But I think the hardest thing for me was to be recognized for the work that I do. And I don't mean to say that I wanted a lot of publicity or anything like that. I just felt sometimes that people really didn't understand the importance of this work. Um, so it was kind of a struggle to begin with. I mean, I just started out, well, I lucked out and I interviewed the late Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, who lived in North Cambridge. And that was fantastic. And actually, he's the one who said to me, my best friends are the people from this neighborhood. So I began to think about that, and I could see that his success really had to do with the fact that he never forgot those people, and in fact, he stayed one of them. And that was the secret to his success, because he understood the importance of those people, and he felt really, really comfortable with them. So that was wonderful to start out that way, but after that, it was not easy because I had to convince a little neighborhood organization that I wanted some money to do an oral history project in North Cambridge. And believe it or not, I think I was getting something like $5,000. And I had to go through a proposal process and all that, and I got funds from the feds actually to do that. But, you know, and frankly, I gotta tell you something, I never took a class in oral history. I mean, outside of a weekend workshop. I mean, that's all I took. And I was working for a little newspaper in North Cambridge, and, you know, I was doing profiles of people in the neighborhood. And I did one on this man called John the Cobbler. And that was a wonderful one. It was up in North Cambridge. And he was a friend of Tip O'Neill's, and my father actually said to me, why don't you interview Tip O'Neill? And I said, oh, I don't think so. And then I said, okay, I'll do it. So I went to see John the Cobbler, and he got me the interview with Tip O'Neill. But, you know, I was frankly making the project up as I went along. I got the beginning money, but quite frankly, it was more instinct than anything else as to how to do this project. In North Cambridge, in oral history, I wasn't even sure of, you know, what I was doing. And the only thing really I had to go on in my own experience was when I was working in Boston at United South End Settlements, the Harriet Tubman House. Do you know about that?
Yeah.
Oh, good, good. I had students there, and we did a project where we asked them about their lives, and they told us, and we wrote it down, and then we made up these boards with what they had said about themselves, and someone took a beautiful picture of them. And actually, what I did was expand on that. You know, I mean, that was the way to show people that what they did really, really mattered. To us at United South End Settlements, to their families, and to the city. And so that's what I used as my basis for doing these interviews. But I have to tell you, no one in North Cambridge would even talk to me because I wasn't a regular there. I mean, I wasn't a person who had lived in Cambridge for 3 generations. So I had to ask a city councilor, Sheila Russell, to write a letter to people in the neighborhood. And after she did that, and I called them, then their door was wide open to me because she grew up in North Cambridge. So every step of the way, it was like I had to figure out what to do. And I'd never done that before. Usually I had a job and that was the job. And I just did it. But this was something different. It was an incredible challenge. And then I got these oral histories together, and that book was called In Our Own Words, Stories of North Cambridge. And then I had to go to the city manager to ask for money to get the book printed, and then to ask him if I could do another project. So I would say all these things, from going to city officials to calling up people in the neighborhood, these were all very challenging for me. But, you know, it really gave me it was my boot camp. And after that, because I had worked it all out, I knew how to do these projects. They all were different in different ways and everything, but I had put the foundation down, and that's what got me through.
Question number 4. How did adult teaching help you?
How did what?
Adult teaching.
Oh, you just made that up.
No. It says here that you
Oh,
you were
okay.
an adult basic education teacher.
Yeah.
At the youth health period summer.
Yeah. Okay, that's a great question. How did it help me? It helped me in that I was working with people who were struggling. Let's say that. They were struggling. I mean, the women that I worked with in the morning, I had morning classes and evening classes. In the morning classes, the women basically stayed home with their kids. But they had a lot of struggles because most women at that time, the women that I taught, were on AFDC, and they were having to live on a very, very, very tight budget. There was a lot of crime in their neighborhoods. They had to be careful about their kids, where they went. The schools were not that great. I'll give you an example. I talked to one guy. I actually taught him. He got his high school diploma in Boston, and he couldn't read. And they just shuffled him through, okay? And they gave him a diploma, and he couldn't read. I mean, it was awful. But it was like, it was my first experience really understanding how the system had basically screwed these people. I mean, to be perfectly blunt about it. And there was no way that I, as one person, was going to be able to make up for their for their lack of education. But I could try to do my best and to help them learn how to read. I mean, I had some people who could not read the alphabet. I had one man, I think from Jamaica, couldn't read the alphabet. I also had people at night who were working at well-paying jobs, but they couldn't read some of the information at work, and they were having to lie and tell people that they had forgotten their reading glasses, and could they read it for them. And that was a very difficult situation for them to be in, because, I mean, they were scared all the time that they were going to get fired. And so I had people like that at night. I also had a man whose brother was in prison for a crime he didn't commit, and it was murder, so he was in for like life. And we all in the class wrote to this man, and from what his brother had said, I mean, to me it was obvious he was innocent. So we all wrote to him and told him we supported him and we were behind him and everything. And he got out. He had a decent enough lawyer that he was exonerated. But I felt like there was a little part of that whole story that we participated in, and I was so happy with that. And I would use material that people were really interested in. Like working people, I would use like manuals that they might bring in from work, and we would use those. I'd use newspaper articles, and I might rewrite them so people could understand them, and then we'd have discussions. I made up a whole different curriculum for people, and it really reflected what was going on in their lives. And many of the people that came there, I don't know, just to walk through the door must have been really something. I had a woman who was coming in, she didn't last too long, but she was coming in from a motel up in Revere to come to the class. Now, I know they probably don't do that much anymore, but she was up there with 3 kids. And so she'd have to take a bus down to Boston and then come into the class. But it just infuriated me that instead of her being in that motel, she could have been in an apartment with her kids, and anyway, I don't want to get off on that so much, but I really saw some of the ways that people really suffered under policies that weren't working. And I was just trying to help. It really gave me, it was a challenge, but another challenge, but it was really good.
Okay, thank you. Question 5, why did you stop working at North Cambridge News?
Why? Well, because instead of writing stories about people, I decided that I wanted to do oral history. And I wanted people to speak for themselves. And one of the first people I interviewed was this woman in a nursing home in North Cambridge, which is now luxury condominiums. But this was a woman, I went there to do a presentation on this oral history project I was going to do. And she was one of the few people who really could understand what I was doing, because a lot of people there had dementia. So anyway, I said, would you be part of this project? And she said, I don't have anything to tell you. And I said, well, you'd be surprised how much you could tell me. Why don't we just try it? And she said, okay, we'll try it. So I go over there with a tape recorder. And she said, I don't want a tape recorder. And I said, you won't even notice it after a while. And she started talking about her life. And she was a radio operator in World War II out on the end of Long Island. And she did that throughout the war. Back then she got a divorce from her husband, which was not very typical. She raised 2 children on her own by working in electronics companies because of the work that she had done, at the receiving station on Long Island. One of her children had agoraphobia, where she wouldn't leave the house. But she basically took care of her, and she took care of her son. And she got by on very, very little money. She also worked for the Girl Scouts. She did volunteer work. And so she gave me this story, and I said, I am going to type this up and show it to you. So I went home, and I had to transcribe it all. So I listened to it, and I transcribed it word for word. And then I printed it in large letters because she had a hard time seeing the print. And I brought it back to her, and I said, I want you to read this story. So I just sat there, and she read it. And I said, do you see what you've done with your life? And she said, maybe I have done some things with my life. And the next day I went back to see her, and she put stars, those sticky stars, all over the paper. And I thought, that's all I need. That's all I need to do this work. This really, it just, it really hit me how important the work was. And quite frankly, it was a better fit for me because I had a hard time separating myself from other people's troubles. And so in this case, when I could allow people to tell their story, they were telling their story. That's what was important. And I was just the interviewer. But I also felt like I was the witness to their story.
Mm-hmm.
that they had this woman had never told her story before to anybody. And I felt like it was a privilege to listen to her words. And I found, doing that project in North Cambridge, that most women said to me, well, I never did anything. The men never said that, but the women did. And the reason they said that, because of that generation, they felt like that was just their job, to get married and bring up their kids.
Mhm.
Well, that was, to my mind, I wanted them to know that was the most important thing in the world. And they also did all these other incredible things while they were taking care of their kids. So, as a woman, I felt like, I hope I turned, their minds around a little bit on this issue.
Okay. Question 6, do you see yourself doing something like
I could see myself working in another place where they might want to use my interviewing skills. I could see myself doing that. When I retire, I'm still going to work probably 2 days a week. And I'd be open to working anywhere where they can use my interviewing skills, because that is what I do really well. It could be a hospital where they're getting people involved in a study that they're doing, a medical study, and I could do the interviewing of potential people for that. There's also a program down at UMass where it's called the Mass Memories Roadshow, and they go around to all these towns all over the state, and they interview people about memories of their town. I'd love to be involved in that. So anything where I can bring my skills and empathy to the process, I would like to be involved in.
Question 7, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there are things that I would like to do when I retire. I'd like to travel. I'd like to go to Australia and New Zealand, first of all. I'd like to take a camper around the United States with a friend. I would like to get involved in classes. I'm not sure what right now. I've always wanted to act, which I would love to do, except that I'm a little nervous about that, and I don't know if I could remember all the lines. I'd also like to be an extra in movies, and I would love it if I could get somebody to buy my laugh, because everybody mentions my laugh, and I could be on a laugh track. And that would really, I would love that, because, I mean, it would probably pay pretty well.
Yeah. Last but not least, how did your steps help you to get where you are today?
How did the steps that I took? I guess I have to say all around that, okay, my sister sent me this card, and it's of this tightrope, and it's on a cliff, and this woman is out on the tightrope, but she's holding it. She's holding the end. So, she's the one who's got to keep moving. She's got to put that tightrope out there. And I guess I feel like I took risks. I mean, there was one point there where I didn't have a job, except to do that first oral history project. I had a little savings, and I went out on a limb because I kind of thought, this is my life's work, and I need to put everything I have into it, and I did. And I feel like that's really important advice for young people, because I think a lot of a lot of young people feel like, well, I have to go out and get a job, and it's gotta be really well paying, and it's really hard to get a job these days. It's really hard. But you've gotta do what you love, and you have to take risks to get there. And I feel like that's what I did. And I would recommend it for anybody because it's challenging. It's work that you want to do, and it makes a difference in people's lives. And I'm really glad that I did it. I mean, I can't think of anything else I'd rather do than celebrate the lives of regular folks like you and me.
Well, thank you for taking time to come and for me to interview.
Thank you
I
so
appreciate
much.
it.
I really, really loved it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nice
to meet you.